Guys, welcome back. I'm Nate with the King of Random. Today we're going to see if we can take some of the clay we made in a previous video and fire it to make it permanent. Making clay from river dirt is awesome, but if you can't get it to stick around, it's not as useful. We want an easy way to fire the clay into something that won't dissolve in water. The purpose of today's video is to see if we can fire this clay that we've made in a regular barbecue. The materials we're going to need are a regular charcoal grill, a bunch of charcoal, and some clay. After we form our clay and let it dry, we're going to get the charcoal started. As the charcoal heats up, we'll move the clay closer and closer to the flames until it's directly over the fire. After that, we'll actually take our clay and put it in the coals and cover it so that it's completely covered by the hot charcoal. We'll try using a shop vac as a bellows to get the charcoal even hotter to help fire the clay. Then once it's all cooled down, we'll take it out and see if it's been fired. The first thing we need is to prepare our clay. Let's try and make a small coil pot. This is quite a bit more clay than I need, so I'm going to tear it in half. My clay is just a little bit too dry, so I'm going to drip in a few drops of water and knead it in so I have a better consistency. The clay should be wet enough that when you squeeze it, it doesn't immediately start cracking everywhere. One of the most common issues with ceramics is having air bubbles in your clay. As the air heats up, it tries to expand and it has nowhere to go, so it will actually just break the clay apart to escape. So let's make sure our clay has no air bubbles in it. To do that, we do what's called wedging the clay. Now we've removed the air bubbles from our clay, let's roll it out into a long coil. Everybody likes making clay snakes. If you're having a hard time getting nice long rolls out of your clay, it might be a little bit too dry. You should add more water, mix it up evenly, and then wedge the air out again. But you don't always have to have pieces of clay this long. I'm gonna end up breaking it up into smaller pieces to make my coil pot anyway. You'll want to make sure that your base is fairly thin. It should be about the same thickness that you make your walls. If they're different thicknesses, they'll dry at different speeds and that can lead to cracking. Now that we have our base formed, let's start building up the walls. I'm first going to use a little bit of water around the edge to help the clay stick to itself. Now we've got the walls built up, let's use just a little bit of water to smooth everything down and join the edges together nicely. Now that we've got our clay pot formed, we need to let it dry. It's best to let it dry slowly to prevent cracking. You should keep your clay in a dry, room temperature environment for 2 or 3 days, maybe as much as a week if you've got thicker bits of clay. Now I actually went ahead and made 3 different clay pieces. Firing in the barbecue is a little bit of an experiment and I wanted to try a few variations. This pot is exactly like the one we just made. It's just clay with nothing else added to it. This pot has a little bit of charcoal ash added to it. And this piece has what's called grog in it. Grog is previously fired clay that you've crushed up into powder and you mix it in with the clay. Both the charcoal ash and the grog are things that I've read can help prevent cracking during the firing process. So we'll see which of these 3 pots turns out the best. You can see that unfortunately all 3 of these pots do have a slight crack running in the bottom. That's because I didn't do a great job of following my own advice to make sure that the bottom is the same thickness as the walls. However, this is a test on firing clay in the barbecue and it shouldn't affect the outcome. Okay, you can see I've got the charcoal lit and then I piled all of them in one corner of the barbecue. That's because I need some space on the side of the barbecue to set the clay for it to heat up slowly. I don't want to throw it right on top of the fire because that'll heat it so fast that it's guaranteed to crack. Now we've got our 3 clay pots in the grill and heating up. I'm also going to be adding this 4th piece, which is something we're going to try casting metal in if firing it works. Our clay is getting nice and warm. We do want to rotate it regularly so that it heats up evenly. If your clay is too hot to touch, use some tongs. Our charcoal is nice and hot. We're going to level it out, add some more on top, and try using our vacuum as a bellows to heat the new charcoal up quickly. On our vacuum, our hose is usually attached to this end, which sucks in, but we've switched it to attach to the out end. This way, the vacuum blows a constant source of air. When I take this away, it's actually going to burst into flames even more. Let's also close our grill a little bit to trap some of the heat so our clay starts warming up even more. All right, it's time to do another round of adding more charcoal and using the vacuum as a bellows to heat it back up again. By now our clay has gotten pretty hot and I'm gonna start putting it on top of the grate, moving it closer and closer to over the coals. You can see that I'm taking a lot of steps to heat the clay up very slowly. In automated gas and electric kilns, this is a process that can take many hours. I've closed the lid of the grill a little bit more, so it's acting like something of an oven. It's going to start cooking that clay and getting it right up to the temperature so we can soon put it right in the charcoal. All right, things are going good. Now what we're gonna do is put one last layer of charcoal on, then we're gonna actually put the ceramic pieces upside down right over the flames, and they're gonna start getting really nice and hot. Flattening down the coals just a little bit. Now I'm gonna be flipping these over so that they will heat a little bit more evenly. It's not just the bottoms exposed to the heat. A little bit more with the vacuum, then I'm gonna close the lid back up. All right, a new layer of charcoal is nice and hot, and we've put the clay upside down right above the heat. So now it's gonna start really getting hot in preparation for going into the coals. We're gonna give it about 15 minutes before we start moving them down into the fire. At this point, our clay has been sitting directly over the heat for a few minutes and should be pretty good and hot. We're gonna take the grill off of the top, put the clay directly down into the charcoal, and pile up some of the charcoal around it. We'll add a little bit more charcoal on top, hit it with the bellows to heat it back up, and then we're just gonna let it sit. That is burning my hand, just reaching over to put the clay in. It's super warm. I can hear clicking noises from the clay, so I'm hoping it's not just about to shatter into a lot of pieces, but it's possible. We'll see. Now I'm gonna pile a bunch more charcoal on top, and once that's started to heat up, I'm gonna hit it with the bellows to really get it nice and hot. I've got a whole bunch more charcoal piled on top, and the advantage to this is that our clay will now be exposed to the high heat for a much longer time. As the first charcoal that I put on there is burning out and disappearing, the newer charcoal is going to be getting hot and keeping all of the fire going for a longer time. You can see that over the process of this, I have used almost this entire bag of charcoal. There's still a little bit down in there, but for the most part, it's been the whole bag. You don't want to get too close, but you can actually see that the clay is now glowing orange in there. That is a really good sign. All right, we have used the vacuum bellows, gotten the charcoal and the clay nice and hot. I'm really optimistic about how it's going. So now I'm gonna take out the block of wood, leave the barbecue closed, and let it just burn out and cool down entirely until tomorrow morning. Then we'll take the clay out and see how it's doing. Okay guys, update. The clay has now been in the barbecue overnight and should have cooled down to the point where it's safe to take out with just my bare hands. Let's open it up and see if the clay is fired. Just seeing if there's any heat that I have to be worried about. I'm not feeling anything, so I'm probably good. Oh, got some problems with this one. That one's starting to fall apart. Okay guys, our pieces are out of the barbecue and there's good news and bad news. The good news is that the clay did fire. These are now permanent and they won't dissolve in water. The bad news is that all of them started cracking a little bit, no matter what variation of clay, ash, or grog I used. Let's get a close-up look at how each of these turned out. This was the regular pot that had no added ash or grog to it. And as you can see, it has separated pretty extremely. You can kind of see the letter A. This is the pot that had charcoal ash mixed in with the clay. I think this one has actually held together the best with only one main crack, but there are a lot of little cracks as well, so it's probably not very far from falling apart further. Here is the pot that was made using grog. This one separated into several little pieces. This right here is probably the largest unbroken piece of clay we have. So I don't know, maybe that does mean that grog is the best. Interestingly, this piece that I made is actually the only one that hasn't fallen apart, and it's also the only one that I didn't make using a coil pot technique, which I think means that it's my coil pot technique that needs work. It's been a long time since I've taken a ceramics class. There are a few different ways to test if your clay has fired. The easiest is to just try scratching it with your thumbnail or a soft tool. If I drag a screwdriver across the surface of the clay, when it was unfired, it would leave a big mark across it. But now that it's fired, it doesn't even leave a mark. I think the most important test about whether your clay is fired is how it reacts to water. With unfired clay, water will cause the clay to quickly dissolve. With fired clay, some water will get absorbed, but it's not going to do anything to the clay itself. Okay guys, quick recap of what we've done for this experiment. We took clay that we made from the river and we fired it in a grill, but we mixed up 3 different mixtures of it. One that was plain clay, one that had charcoal ash in it, and one that had grog in it to see what would happen and if there's any difference in how they fired. Unfortunately, my ceramic sculpting techniques are apparently a little bit flawed because all of the coil pots I made had started to crack before they were fired, and in the firing process they broke apart a lot more. But the non-coil pot piece that I made actually stayed together pretty well. All in all, I would call this experiment about a 75% victory. We did get the clay to fire in the grill, and that was the main goal. Thank you for joining us for this video, and we look forward to the next one. Talk to you then. I bet I end up melting this nozzle a little bit today.
Oh, and I'm lighting the barbecue paint on fire.
What's up guys, Grant here. I'm just working behind the scenes on some important stuff. Keep supporting Nate, he's the man and he's bringing back all the DIY that you've been asking for.